Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Rant says.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome back to another episode.
They left?
Of
They're
Cellar Door Skeptics. They did. They left from last week, and they're joining us again for another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. That's my co-host behind me. Few beers into the night.
I'm talking because I'm here at the beginning.
He is. He's here at the beginning this time. He didn't decide to go have a bunch of family stuff happen. Heck, we're going to turn explicit tag on.
Yeah, I think we're
right
going to
now.
have to.
He didn't have a bunch of fucking shit to go do before
it was just
he
the title end. I mean, I don't think there's any way you can get through a rant without getting some swearing.
Maybe. So tonight's episode is going to be a little bit different. We decided to cut and nix all guests for this episode and just do a duo set, a tangent set, a tantastic set right here. Because we're going to go into what we call a rambling rant tangent. Yes. And we're not going to just go off and rant about anything. This isn't going to be an episode where we just randomly talk about random type things. We've got a preset plan that what we're going to bitch about.
This isn't a Trump rally. We're not just going to yell out of stream
I might just randomly divert. Oh, no, I won't.
It could happen. It could happen. We could end up in Taiwan in like 20 minutes. It's possible.
We could. But there's several topics that we've been wanting to do. And if you haven't listened to the show very often, or you're new to the show and just joining us, we actually have a side segment, an opinion show that we do called Through the Attic Door, right?
Through the attic window.
Through the attic window?
Damn it. There's no doors in the attic.
All right, through the attic window, right? And so, the whole point of that was to be able to go on opinion tangents and rant about different things. Well, we decided that we're so backed up, we got to just explode all over this episode.
Ew.
And I'm sorry for...
Thanks to the graphic. I appreciate that.
But there's so many good topics. And we just can't help ourselves. So in this episode, we're going to do a couple different things. We're going to talk a little bit about what the DHS is hinting at and how they want to separate parents from children because they're entering the U.S. undocumented. Big fear thing right here.
Department of Homeland Security is, for anyone who doesn't know what the DHS is.
All right. We're also going to cover the Tucker versus Bill Nye discussion. And I don't want to call it a debate because I don't think Bill Nye knew how to debate.
That was just a bunch of yelling.
There's no yelling. He didn't know how to answer the question. Yeah. So Hannah and I actually got this similar idea without actually talking to each other, and both decided we were going to do research on this because we wanted to be able to back up Bill Nye's claims or debunk them, one of the two.
Yeah, whichever one was right. We were just wanted. Bill did a bad job, and Tucker demanded a scientific answer, and
so
nothing came out of that.
Yes.
So we wanted to find out what the science said.
After that, we're going to talk about how stem cell research has helped vaccines to save lives. And we're not just talking a few thousand, a few hundred. We're talking about billions of lives.
It's not particularly specifically a stem cell. It's basically a human it's a human protein or whatever. It's not a stem cell.
But it's from stem cells, right?
No, it's a lung cell that they basically took and turned into like a zero data point. So like whenever you're working on a vaccine, you create this human analog.
You're killing the intro, man, with your science here.
I gotta do it.
You don't have to. You can wait. You can hold off.
We can't let anybody think that this is going to be stem cells. It's basically a human analog.
Ranty
it's
Magoo.
Like a zero.
All right,
point,
Rant.
So.
Rant boy. We'll call him Rant boy.
Next one. What's one more? We got one more. I'm all excited about this one. This one makes my skin
The last one that we're going to cover is we're going to re-examine if the DNC is even going to be committed to change, or if they're literally just going to take their same card deck and go, I'm going to reshuffle the cards and we're going to get the exact same type of president candidate that we're going to run in 4 years, just like Clinton.
They're going to double down on an establishment.
Yep, doubling down. We're going to see if that's even going to be a possibility.
So what do we start here?
We're going to start.
We're going to roll the
Trump administration right here.
Man.
We got a couple of different articles. The main one we have.
We had a viewer say they wanted to hear this.
You're right, we did. We actually had a submission to us, a submission that came in that said, hey, we would love for you to cover whether the Trump administration is considering separating women and children, not women, children, women and children at the Mexican border. And at first I was like, what is that? I've never heard of this. You know,
me either.
It sounds logical, right? Because, I mean, the orange sewer monster seems to come out in full sometimes.
I had not heard of this at all. You said that this was something that they wanted to hear about. I know about, basically, there's the Syrian refugee issues, and then there's stuff like that. But I have not heard anything about this is basically a threat to, okay, if you bring a kid in with you, you're coming in illegal. Your kid goes over in door 2, and you go through door 1, and then you get to find out what kind of horror show awaits. That's terrifying, and that's really scary. And so, clicking through it, I'm just like, there's no way this is real. But
that was one of the draws to this, is that, you know, the listener said, hey, there's no coverage of this. Why is the media not covering this? I mean, and you know, we're now into mid-March, and this is back from February 21st.
Yeah.
And that's kind of amazing, right? You know, we got to sit here and go think about it and go, it's been very minimal coverage. You would think out of all the things Trump's done, this would actually be pretty big, because we're not just talking about, you know, women and children. We're talking about separating them, making it so that they can't see each other anymore, basically creating some sort of a threat of detention centers to withhold the rights of these individuals to actually see each other. This is insane. This kind of goes back to, you know, World War II, when we started to separate families inside the they didn't call them concentration camps. They called them
Asian.
Yes.
Yeah.
When they started separating Japanese people, but they did the same thing. They started separating people from families. It was this whole big thing. Now, I sat there and said, okay, well, let's find some articles. Well, there's 2 main articles we found. One from Reuters and one from the Washington Post. And we just said, hey, we got to cover this. So he said, currently women and children are generally held together in one of 3 detention centers, either in Texas or in Pennsylvania. And they're held there for a few days to a few weeks, and before being released to wait for an immigration judge to decide their case. Now, if we started splitting up families, it is meant to serve as a deterrent for illegal people crossing the border.
Yeah, that's a massive threat. I mean, what would you think? Okay, we're going to leave. Increasingly, it's not just Mexican immigrants. It's people coming from Central America that are going through Mexico and then coming into the United States. But either way, any of these people, these women come in, let's say there isn't a full family, so the father's not involved. This is just a mother trying to bring her kids to a better life. And the threat is, guess what, Mom? If you come across this border and you're caught, we're going to take your kid and put them in, like I said, room B, and you go into room A. And I don't know if you know anything about the political, bureaucratic, white, or the red tape. You know, people are going to get lost in this, man. There's going to be tons of people that are going to get caught. There's going to get all kinds of stuff, and people are going to get lost. People are going to get, children are going to be, hurt. Kids that are not able to make a fully functioning, cognizant, rational decision as they want to go. They have to go where their parents go, and they are going to be dealing with the massive consequences of this situation when it comes to being stuck in foster homes inside the educations or whatever education system they would be get or lack of, or sent back by themselves separate from their parents. I mean, there's a lot of really, really bad slippery slope arguments that could happen here.
Yeah.
But I really just think that this is dangerous when it comes to it's different when you're dealing with adults, but when you're threatening children, unassuming, the children that are not making these decisions to come to the United States, whatever, like this is going past nationalism, the nation state or race or whatever. Like these are kids.
Hold on though, Santa. Hold on a second. So, the Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly, right?
Yeah,
the guy that has been the spokesperson of this discussion. He was on CNN's Wolf Blitzers, right? And you know what he said? You want to hear what he said? And let me tell you what he said, because maybe it'll put you at ease. He said this. He says, I would do almost anything to deter the people from Central America getting on this very, very dangerous network that brings them up from Mexico. He said children removed from their mothers and fathers would be, here you go, quotation marks, folks, well cared for as we deal with their parents. Now, I don't know about you, Hannah, but I think I could take that guy's word, don't you?
It seems kind of sketchy to me.
What? Why? Why would that seem sketchy to you?
I just have a hard time. I have a hard time believing that if you look at the way that the United States takes care of American-born children as our orphanages and kids that aren't cared for and taken care of. My father's actually went through that system, and I know firsthand from his experiences what he has told me that it was like when he was younger. And I these aren't situations that are getting much better, and we hear about children left behind all the time. I would say, I mean, this is a bad thing, and it's a bad assumption to make, but I would say that the United States is not going to take as good a care of undocumented children as it will, and that it already poorly does take care of orphan children and I guess wards of the state in the United States already. It's like these kids are going to get the bottom of the barrel care. Like I don't well cared for. I honestly don't believe what he says there.
Well, I don't know, Hannah. I mean, sometimes you got to trust people in the government, right? I can't even say that with a straight face.
I can't.
All right, so back to the article. He goes on to say that he realizes the policy change would appear to the average person it would be important to keep them off this network, right? He keeps talking about this awful network. Now, let's dive into this for a second here. And again, remember, this is the Rant episode because this pisses me off.
Is this a criminal network that he's talking about here?
He's talking what?
Is he talking about a criminal network? What's he talking about?
Obviously it's a criminal network because they're illegal immigrants, Hannah. Anybody entering the U.S. illegally is technically a criminal. Sarcasm. You didn't even get the sarcasm.
But okay,
he's talking about a network of the people that like the coyotes. So we talked a little bit about this, you and I, in person before, because we have another individual that I've personally debated in private over, coyotes bringing illegal immigrants across the border and the danger of it. But think about this. If you're in Central America, you're barely able to get food. You're barely able to make your life happen. You're basically being repressed by regime government. You decide to travel down a road that'll take you to the United States because we promise gold and honey and nectar and freedom. And you and your whole point is you have to cross this really dangerous bridge to get here.
Lottery.
You're still playing the lottery. The difference is you're going to play that lottery either which way. The difference is where you're going to get killed. Are you going to get killed? Take the risk to get killed on the road, or take the risk to get killed inside of your home state. And this actually brings me back to NPR did an American Life episode, and this has got to be about 3 months old now. But they did this right after the Trump administration won. And they started talking to people that supported Trump and changed their mind and actually said that they wish they never had. And then they also talked to other immigrants, people that were living in the United States that were fearful of their green cards because they didn't know what was going to happen. And there was this younger couple, and they went back to their home. It's not a state. They went back to their home country. And they were talking about how they got there. And they went to visit their dying grandfather, basically, to say goodbye to him. And they got there, they got welcomed, they got moved in by family, they started hanging out. They said, but there's nothing around here. It's not the same as living in America. And the younger lady was she actually worked in film. And she said, well, I would like to go see a movie theater. Well, the road between her house and the big city to get to the movie theater was plagued by gangs.
So you had to pay tolls or
whatever. No, they just stopped you and took your shit and fucking, basically...
You can go to the movies, but you don't have any money to go there by the time you get there.
Yeah, and you have a possibility of getting mugged or murdered. And
or
she told a story about
captive.
her... Yeah, she told a story about her cousin and how her cousin had been basically got lucky. He got mugged, and luckily he was able to... He left the keys in the bike and luckily, knocked one of the guys down, jumped on the bike, and drove off. Otherwise, he'd be dead because he was from the wrong territory. So we want to talk about the illegal road. All we're doing is saying, hey, we're going to restrict you from, going down this road. But instead of going in and actually taking care of the road or going and helping these economies, all we're going to do is we're going to say, don't go down the road, just die in your own home, because it's less of a burden on us and we don't have to feel bad if your country is shit. That's what that says to me. That's what that says. Because guess what? One of the big things that President Obama did is he had a catch and release. As much horrible things as Obama had, and I don't like his immigration policy.
Yeah, he deported more people than George W. Bush
exactly. Did. But he also had what was called a catch and release of undocumented immigrants, and what that allowed for those immigrants to do is to be allowed to stay inside of the United States unregulated to some extent until they had their court hearings.
And then some of them would disappear or something like that. So, I mean,
Yeah.
the ones who were here and honest and they actually went through the system and they made their best effort, those are great cases. And I would honestly, I would love to know, I mean, I don't know if there's any way to really find a statistic on this, but like the people who really, really did want to go through the system, they wanted to do it legally as best they could. And there were just too many barriers. There was too much of a time constraint. Back home, there was a chance of death. And they just said, I have to absolutely put all of my eggs in a basket and take whatever riskiest route I can to get through this and make it into this. Because in the end, when we're looking at this, like separation of children from parents, not even just mothers, but separation of children from parents. So your parents are making this decision, like they've realized that back home, the drug trade or whatever, and these are things that the United States has a major influence in. The fact that we have this war on drugs, this influences the drugs and the gangs and the cartels and stuff. So this makes it really bad for the people in their home places. So this could be something that's our policy is driving them up into our country in and of itself. These types of changes, they're fear-based as far as scaring people away from ever trying to come in the country. We'll take your child away from you, even though your child really has no understanding of what's happening. They're just trying to stay alive as much as you are. This is just dangerous for the Homeland Security Administration to try to do.
And they talk about, the lawyers and the legal teams are starting to talk about this now. They're starting to talk about how this could create a lifelong psychological trauma for children, especially those children that have just completed a perilous journey. So you know what this feels like, Hannah, right? This feels like America saying, okay, hold on. There's a dangerous trek. We don't want you guys to make this. We don't want any of you to come across the border and do this because it's really hard, and you could lose your life, and look at all these tragedies that have happened. It's the same thing as saying, hey, we really don't want you to eat sugar, right? Because we know it causes diabetes, and large amounts of sugar does this, so we're going to regulate your sugar intake. That's what this is like. This is literally the anti-libertarian, anti-Republican, anti-law. They're creating a very a restrictive government that's creating laws to govern people by. Now, they're using fear tactics, and we could talk about the 1984 versus Huxley. We could talk about that, and I don't really want to get into that tonight. We did that 2 weeks ago. We don't want to get into that tonight. To me, the bigger question here and the bigger issue here is the fact that it's almost like, hey, the only way we think we can get you to stop doing what you're doing is by cutting your hand off. That's what it feels like. Hey, you're going to come to America, I'm taking one of your hands. And you're like, well, that's okay. You can have my hand. And it's like, all right, now we're going to take two of your hands. And they're like, okay, well, fine. I'll lose two of my hands. My kids can still work for me. I'll still be able to get help. They're like, all right, fine. Screw it. You won't listen to us. We're just taking your kids. Now, think about this. If your kids get lost in a store, they're able to find you. They can remember your name. They're able to identify you through DNA. You separate illegal immigrants and their children. There's no way to reconcile this.
There's no papers. These people don't have any way of identification.
And if we want to talk about costs here, not only are we going to have to talk about whether we're going to repair people up if they get across. So what if these illegal immigrants, we go, okay, well, you have enough, we're going to grant you asylum. Here you go. Here's your green card. And we want you to start doing all these things. How do they find their kids? How are you going to control this? You're talking about a completely unregulated system in which there's no absolute possibility that Trump's actually sat here or his team and thought this out. Well, there's no way. Where's the plan?
There's an assumption that the good thing is going to be done here, that the people are going to be taken care of. And I question the fact that these people would be properly taken care of. I mean, we had this issue. Sean Hannity, surprisingly of all people, said, hey, we have to take care of all these kids that are stuck at the border with no parents and they were deported or whatever. And there was a crisis a couple years ago of all these children who had no food, no water. And Sean Hannity said, you know what, we got to help these people. Wow, really? Sean Hannity of all people? Glenn Beck of all people? I mean, there was some surprising conservative movements. They're like, listen, these are children. We get it. You can have your political differences and try to find your solution, but don't attack the kids. And that's the thing for me.
Exactly.
You can deal with the parents, but don't attack the children. Because that is, to me, that's the biggest thing as far as policy when it comes to an inept and completely useless administration is if you're going to attack the kids to get you what you want. It's just childish.
And that's exactly what we talked about last episode with the Rational Politics Project and Gleb. Tispergy is the nicest way I could put it. Dr. T. I can't pronounce his name. Sorry.
He's going to yell
Gleb.
at us every time he talks to us now.
He's okay with it. He says, call him Dr. T.
Dr. T.
But that's what we were talking about in the last episode, everyone. That's what we were talking about, is this illogical desire to create something. This illogical news. This Trump administration is saying, only get news from us. And I'm very sad that the public news has not picked up on this. I'm very sad that this is not a bigger thing. Because to me, like you said, Hannah, we're separating children from their parents. And I know this is going to be an argument from experience here, right? And I know I sound a little rough because of my cold, but if my 5-year-old, if we were in the store and my 5-year-old got lost, she would be detrimentally upset if she didn't get to see me again. We're talking about the fact that my daughter, just the same as anybody else's daughter, they would be upset.
Well, just imagine if you took her somewhere. She doesn't know where she's going. She just knows that she's going somewhere with mommy and daddy. And she gets there and she's yanked away. She doesn't know why. She's removed. She doesn't understand the fact that immigration and rules and laws and borders or whatever. She just knows she's been taken away and she's put off in this other place. It takes a while for that kind of understanding and that kind of realization to happen. In such a time, she's going to be scared and terrified, and it's going to be a traumatic event. And like you said earlier, this could be a traumatic event that could shape the social well-being of a young person as they get older. These kids could be permanently damaged and permanently hurt in these types of things. This is dangerous, and that's why I say we can deal with the adults, we can deal with people trying to get across the border, but don't punish the children. And we can figure out some way to protect kids. That's going to be a nominal thing for me.
Exactly. And why should the kids have to suffer for what the adults have done? I think there's got to be a better way. We're not going to get into it today, but there has got to be a better way. And guess what? Fuck you if you want to separate my kid from yours. That's all I got to say. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break to talk about
This is Ishmael Brown,
Neil,
from the Angry
Bill
Black
Nye,
Podcast,
and Chris
you're
Tucker. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hey, all you listeners, I'm Robert.
And I'm Amy from Secular Yakking.
And we just wanted to let you know that if you've got 30 minutes to kill,
Then we're the podcast for you. We're just some old married couple who's been yakking at each other over the many years.
and we thought we should start making it so you can listen in on our yakking.
We dig past the mainstream and bring you the news that you may or may not have heard about.
We take a look at politics, religion, science, and pretty much anything we feel like yakking about and sharing it with you. And let us not forget our weekly Mr. Potter Award.
No, we're not professionals on anything we talk about, but we love to yak about stuff and give you our opinion on the matter.
So tune in at secularyakking.com or check out our feed on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and anywhere good podcasts can be heard.
And who knows what craziness will happen.
Yeah, just like this.
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today because we bring the discussion with the sources.
Hey guys, this is Wyatt Mathers from the Atheist Avengers podcast. You are listening to the Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
All right, welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics.
ranty rant episode.
Yep, the rampant rant tangent from Tantastic and Hannah Boy.
Really? That's my name?
That's the first thing I
Why
can
not?
go with.
Why not? We're just going to say whatever the first thing that comes to our mind tonight, right? Because Tucker Carlson is going to be talking this afternoon. And why not? That's Chris. That's Chris Tucker. That's close enough,
I'm sorry.
right?
All right, so I have to make a correction, folks. I'm very sorry that I said it was Chris Tucker.
People were super excited. They were. They thought we were all of a sudden in Hollywood here.
No, very sorry. It was not Chris Tucker. The cold medicine is killing me today. It was not Chris Tucker. It was Tucker Carlson who debated Bill Nye on his show. And again, I'm very sorry. That was not a on purpose thing. I did not do that on purpose. It was just a slip of the tongue. And maybe it's because I've been thinking about Chris Tucker a lot more lately because, in all fairness, I haven't seen a lot of his movies lately, and when I did see them, I was like, "Oh, I really like this guy as a comedian."
You haven't been on the Def Jam website in a while, then I'm guessing.
No, I have not.
Yeah, no. Well, the Def Jam, all the Def Jam movies. Chris Tucker was part of those for what was it, How to Be a Player and some of that other stuff. So I know Chris Tucker definitely hit his peak with Jackie Chan, but he's been kind of out of the client. I think he was in the Fifth Element. That was a big movie when he was like the crazy announcer guy. That was a pretty interesting one there, but that's not anything that we're even
That's
really
not
talk
where
about
we're going with
Yeah.
this episode. We are actually going to talk about we're at Tucker Carlson. And
I almost said it again.
I did almost say it again. Leave me alone. Tucker Carlson and Bill Nye, because I saw this post, and it's kind of funny because Hannah saw this post on somebody else's page. We must have too many conservative friends.
It was the video,
on our Facebook,
right?
It was
saw
a video.
The video? Yeah.
Yep, somebody posted a video from Tucker Carlson's website, and what happened was I watched it because they were basically like, watch Bill Nye get owned, and I'm like, what? There's no way Bill Nye can.
I
get
saw the
owned.
opposite. I saw watch Bill Nye own Tucker Carlson, and I watched it, and I was like, well, he didn't really own him that well. I mean, I was kind of disappointed. And that's basically how you felt too. You're like,
yeah, I was aggressively disappointed that Bill Nye couldn't actually prove the science behind it. And,
it was one question. There was one question that Tucker held on.
Yes, and there was, and so I sat there and so I messaged Hannah a couple days ago, and I was like, hey, I really want to cover this segment because it really bothers me that Bill Nye couldn't do this. Now, in all fairness, Bill Nye, that's not his field of science, right? But Bill Nye has taken on a public persona of trying to debunk different scientific claims, right? Or anti-scientific claims.
He's become the science guy, so like an all-encompassing...
He's the figurehead. He's the guy that does this. Now, we all make mistakes, and that's fine.
Well,
and you know what? I'm not going to hold it against him. I'm not going to ban Bill Nye. I'm not going to go after him and be like, I'm never going to listen to your show again or your new TV series. I'm not going to do that. But I do want to correct all the false things that all the things that he didn't point out were basically false. And the big thing that Tucker Carlson was looking at, right? I mean, he had a stickler point. There was a big stickler point for him.
He hammered it.
Yes.
Drove me nuts.
And what was that, Hannah?
Is the rate. You want to know the rate of climate change if humans didn't exist. So if humans were not on the planet at all, what would the rate of climate change be so that we can compare it to the current rate now? And he kept asking Bill, what is it? What would
I'll
it
be honest, that's a fair question, Hannah. Like,
it is.
I
It's a great
actually were
question.
sitting here, I sat there and watched that, and I was like, fuck, I can swear that's right. Fuck, I didn't know that answer. I didn't fucking know that. I was like, I got research to do, man, because if I ever got asked that question, I would feel like a stupid shill for the leftist people. If I couldn't actually answer that, I'd be like, well, it just is. How do you not know this? And he's like, well, dude, come on. And in all fairness, I think that Bill Nye should actually come out with a statement explaining it. And now it's going to look a little bit. It will
After
look a
the
little bit
fact.
after the fact, and that's
Yes.
fine.
Well, that's how that's fine with
But
science.
that's how science
though.
works, right?
Yeah. If you don't have a perfect explanation in the moment, at the exact moment of the question, that's okay in science. It's not okay on news question shows. So, like, Tucker Carlson is going to basically come away saying, I won because Bill Nye didn't have a proper answer to my question. Well, that doesn't mean the proper answer to your question doesn't exist. It's just that Bill didn't have that at that moment. But you know what? one of the great things about people used to ask Einstein. It's like, why don't you memorize all of this information? All of this stuff, and he said that's what books are for. Why fill my head with all of this useless or with all of this extra stuff when I can go to a book for a reference point? I like to keep my mind free and think about things. And so this is the same kind of question. It's like Bill Nye was basically asked a very specific question about a very specific rate and information that Chris and I both agree he should have come to a climate change question interview show with this kind of information. He didn't, and it obviously shows for anybody who either supports or doesn't support Bill Nye that he did not do as good as he could have. But the important thing is Tucker wanted to know the rate, and Bill didn't have an answer for that. And so I immediately searched the internet, and I found a couple of really great websites. So like NASA has an awesome, it's earthobservatory.nasa.gov. And we have the included link in here so you can find it. But it's just basically using the ancient evidence. So we're talking fossilized evidence where we measure either entrapped air in the fossil record, or we measure the composition of different types of sediment and different types of rock. We can measure what the atmosphere was like at those times. So using this ancient evidence, scientists have built a record in Earth's path climates. So they're called paleoclimates. The paleoclimate record, combined with global models, show past ice ages as well as periods even warmer than today. So previous periods that were super hot, and then also ice ages. But the paleoclimate record also reveals that the current climatic warming is occurring much more rapidly than in past warming events. So this is the rate question that Tucker Carlson kept asking. So as the Earth moved out of ice ages, so let's say an ice age just ended, which it's relatively recent that an ice age ended. We're in a moderate ice age right now where it's relatively warm, but it's kind of nice. As the Earth moved out of ice ages in the past, the global temperature rose relatively 4 to 7 degrees over about 5,000 years. But in the past century alone, it has climbed 0.7 degrees Celsius. So that rate itself is 10 times the rate that would come out of an average out of ice age recovery warming. So what we're seeing is that in the time period of this 5,000 years, we're seeing just in that it was 4 to 7 degrees in 5,000 years. Just in the past 100 years, we've seen 0.7. That's 10 times faster than it should have been had humans had no effect at all. And so this is what people are usually pointing at, is that these numbers are a little bit higher than they should be if Earth was just left alone without any external forces, so like meteorites or something like that. And then I guess even moving on further, it says that the current models predict that the Earth will warm between 2 to 6 degrees Celsius in the next century. So in the next 100 years, 2 to 6 degrees, when we saw 0.7 degrees in the last 100 years. So when global warming has happened at various times in the past 2 million years, it has taken the planet approximately 5,000 years to warm that 5 degrees. So now we're looking at roughly 2 to 6 in the next 100 years, but it took 5,000 years to get a 5-degree increase.
Yeah, so if you want to look at your rate,
this rate is 20 times faster. This is massive.
Yeah, it's huge. It's not like somebody just lit a fire and the fire is going to go out. The problem is like we lit like 100 fires under this teepee, and it's like, well, one fire may not catch it, right? But 100 fires is definitely going to catch this on fire. And so the expansion rate is just so astronomical. It's insane to sit here and think that it's not the it's the same. It's insane to even think that.
Without any external forces, so without like a meteorite that crazy changes the amount of energy and dust and whatever in the atmosphere. Like just Earth naturally happening in the last ice ages. What we are seeing now is something is making it much, much faster. And it seems that the only major change is human technology.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I don't know. I don't even know what to say to this sometimes, because it's over, basically like it's over like a 94% or something like that increase. And it's just insane to me that we would even sit here and try and justify this. Yeah. I mean, I get it, right? I get that Bill Nye failed, but you can look this up. I mean, we Googled this. We found this information within 2 hours. We spent 2 hours of time on research on this to get this answer. Now, Right. Tucker Carlson, I get it.
Well,
You want to
he's
be
an
edgy,
extreme
man. You want
skeptic.
ratings. You want to fit into that GOP centrist or left or right centrist fold. You want to be that person that's going to go, yeah, look at me. I'm going to challenge climate change. The guy that posted this openly posted anti-climate change stuff and basically said Trump denies it, so therefore it exists. And it's like, well, what the fuck, dude? Like, just because Trump claims it doesn't mean it's right. Just because Trump claimed wiretapping and, oh, hey, guess what? Last week we had a guy on that helped me debunk it. We had a fucking scientist, a PhD guy, come on the show and explain not only why that is BS, but where there is absolutely no evidence to support Trump's claims.
Well,
And we want to sit here and talk about it in the same way as climate change, man. Climate change is the exact same thing.
Well, what we have here, we have evidence. We've sourced the Scientific American. We've sourced NASA. So we have data. They make measurements every year. There's tons of this information. So the people who are saying that's wrong, Tucker Carlson, who's saying, "Well, I am not convinced." Well, show us your data set that says that our information isn't quite as good. That's the challenge that we need to make here. So if the denier says, "No, I don't think you're correct. I think your information is incorrect. I think this is just a normal scalar up and down of the regular way of the Earth's natural climate change ups and downs." Well, that's great. So what you should do is you should put together your information of the normal ups and downs of the Earth, and you should come here and you should say, "Look, these are the normal ups and downs of the measurements that I've made of the fossil record and all that gas that's trapped in the ground and with cores of the ice in Antarctica that show the environment at very specific times throughout history because the ice is layered just like a tree trunk." Well, here's all the information that I've got. And when I look at that information, it shows that there is absolutely no increase in the speed of climate change, even though humans have been dumping CO2 and carbon monoxide and methane into the atmosphere. If you can show that, feel free to just to submit that to the Nobel Prize committee and win and get $1 million because you're going to disprove one of the most thorough scientific theories in existence right now as far as evolution, climate change, and all these are the leading things. If you've got that, Tucker Carlson, then feel free to put it out there and disprove and make millions of dollars being the one guy who has the without question evidence. Or you could just yell at Bill Nye the Science Guy on your channel. And if he doesn't have the answer, if he, Bill Nye, the voice of science all over the planet, doesn't have the answer, then of course you're right. Think
about it. I mean, for him, he doesn't care. It's all that selfish gene, right? For him, it's just, hey, there's money here. Oh, I'm going to exploit him. It's ratings. It feels like Johnny Brotherton 2.0. But if we go back to the Scientific American, right, and we go back to they actually explain this in a whole different method. He said ecosystems shifting a yard a day.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, right? But it is. It's a lot. He says, think about it this way. Plants and animals essentially would need to move 1 yard each day farther north or higher in elevation to maintain the conditions they prefer. So now while farmers and others can shift the crops they grow, he says is different for a butterfly or a maple tree. Maple trees, they're not very good at moving. I haven't seen one move. I don't know about you, but I have not seen one move.
I know for a fact that Ents aren't real and the Lord of the Rings is not a literal thing. So trees can't get up and start walking around.
And he says this. He says, you don't have forests moving over long distances very fast. That's not historical. We've never seen that happen. Trees can shift over time when what happens? Oh, seeds are blowing. Squirrels will carry them. But it's not that rapid.
Well, the ecosystem
How long
has
does
to
it take
support
for
it.
a tree to grow? Think about it this way. How long does it take for a tree to grow? So you want to move millions of trees, they got to be able to move fast and grow fast. Well, that doesn't happen. That's not how nature works. And then that's my biggest problem here is that people are looking at things inconsistently. People are saying, well, humans are the typical evolutionary process. And I'm saying, no. We're an accelerated evolutionary process. We're part of this, yes. But we've been able to find a way to accelerate our evolutionary stance compared to other things. And unless we're willing to turn around and sit down and go, okay, we're going to exceed everybody's expectations and we're going to help every or almost every species exceed expectations by large numbers, 10 to 20, times the numbers of evolutionary rate that they're growing. If we can't do that, then it's illogical to think that we're not creating damage by moving things faster than the normal evolutionary process can handle.
Oh, yeah, without question. We're speeding everything up. The evolutionary process that we've talked about multiple times, and we'll talk about in my debate, is that everything moves really, really slow, beyond slow, further beyond any kind of human recognition. In the Scientific American article, it said they looked at climate events or major transitions that have happened on Earth since the extinction of the dinosaurs. And those included a period when Earth emerged from an ice age. So temperatures then increased the 3 to 5 degrees or 4 to 7 that we talked about. And this is similar to the amount scientists say is possible with ongoing climate change. But that change happened over 20,000 years when you look back as far as the dinosaurs and not just the time constraints that we talked about earlier. The scientists said that this kind of speed of stuff is now happening in scales of decades instead of 5,000, 20,000, 10,000 years. And so when they looked at these periods of global climate temperature changes, that we're looking at droppings of 11 to 12 degrees over 52 million to 34 million years ago. Like this, between those two is millions and millions of years. So that large of a temperature change in global temperature is, over 18 million years. This is a really slow, drawn out change. And evolution and climates have the ability to move and morph with that kind of slow speed. But what we're going at right now, like you will see deserts form in flash fire. You'll see, massive sections of the earth in utter disarray when it comes to the ecosystems because it's changing too fast. They can't adapt to it. It's one of the important things about natural selection is that it adapts to the environment that it's in, and we are just wreaking havoc on it. And so nothing can go fast enough. And that's the big issue here. It's what we're worried about is that the Earth will go on beyond humans. It will exist way past when we are all gone, provided we either haven't perfected the fact that we need to exist on whatever, or geoterraforming and can control the environment on the planet, or leave the planet itself. But if the Earth is allowed to maintain its current cycles and ice ages and super hot aires, the humans, we won't be able to live on the Earth if a massive change in temperature happens. And so we need to figure out what we're going to do. And I mean, obviously, just saying there's no such thing possible is not really an answer. And Bill Nye not having the proper answer, we wish he would have come to this information before he went on Tucker Carlson's shows. And that's why we were so frustrated and we had to have this rant.
We did. And rant it will be, Hannah. Rant it will be, because it's amazing how nobody can seem to understand that just because somebody popular can't explain it, doesn't
not immediately.
Yeah, doesn't mean that it exists. And I don't know. I don't know what to tell you sometimes. Sometimes I just feel like people just want to live in their own biases and accept what they want as truth.
It's too easy to be in your bubble. It really is.
Form resistance, hashtag resistance, hashtag rant, hashtag rantantastic.
Oh, man. You got to have the arm pump in there, too.
You got to.
The fist in the air.
You do.
Or me with my hearing aid in my ear and my battery.
Well, we're going to take a really quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about whether stem cells have saved millions of lives, or maybe if it's just vaccines. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Badass host of the Unbuckling Bobberfell podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
I'm Dustin.
And I'm Wesley.
We host the Atheist Nomads podcast.
We're godless geeks who take a skeptical look at
politics, religion, science, technology, and history.
We also interview leaders in the atheist, skeptic, and humanist community.
Check us out at atheistnomads.com.
That's atheistnomads.com.
Considering how you want to help Cellar Door Skeptics, head over to iTunes or your favorite podcast app and give us a rating, because every rating helps push us in front of new listeners. And since our main goal here at Cellar Door Skeptics is to provide the most accurate information possible, We hope that more ratings will mean that more people get to hear the topics that we're presenting. We don't insist that we get a 5-star rating, but Hannah's favorite number is 5, and the more gold stars he gets, the more special he's gonna feel. So what do you say? Head on over to iTunes or Google Play, give us a rating, and help engage with Cellar Door Skeptics today.
This is Deborah McTaggart, the voice of Beatrice Johnson from Atheist Apocalypse Podcast, and you are listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Now, back to the show.
Tens of millions of lives saved through a 1962 breakthrough. Well, that's at least what the study says. Nearly 200 million cases of polio, measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, andovirus, don't know how to say that, rabies, hepatitis A, and approximately 450,000 deaths from all these diseases were prevented in the U.S. alone just between 1963 and 2015 by a vaccination. Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. This next rant segment is brought to you by water, Chris Tanner's coughing fit from the spring cold, and the letter F.
Okay, really? We're going straight to the Sesame Street. This is the letter F, ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages.
And I apologize for the raspy voice, and I apologize. You can probably hear my coughing in the background. I mean, I'm trying to muffle it. I'm trying to run out of the room. I'm doing all these different things. I'm very, very sorry. I do not know what this is, but whatever this cold is, it is literally killing me.
This is not the pro-marijuana. This is not. This is
no,
not the
I haven't smoked
smoke it
like,
if you got it segment.
Yeah, it's been like a month now, man. Like I've given it up to try and get rid of this cough, and it's just whatever disease this is. I probably have to go to the doctor now and spend money on my outrageous health insurance.
This is a really cool study. This article that that Chris is just reading from. It's a study published by AIMS Public Health, so Ames Public Health. And they talk about in 1962 there was a major breakthrough. Essentially, there was a thing called WI-38, and it was essentially a human analog created for vaccination purposes only. So it is a diploid human cell culture, and it's a line comprised of fibroblasts that are derived from lung tissue from an aborted white Caucasian female fetus. So when you hear about people talking about, you've got fetus in your vaccinations, or, I don't know, if it's a South Park episode when Christopher Reeve is sucking the juice out of a fetus so he can walk again and become Superman. And obviously, this is where some of that comes from, is that this is a human cell culture that was created as an analog for vaccination. So what we have to do is we have to create like a place for it. Will this vaccination hold true for humans? And what we used to use is primate cells. We used chimpanzees or whatever, and there was problems with that when it comes to contamination or whatever. So we created, we as in this person named Hayflick and Moorhead, and they created this analog, WI-38, and they use that as the basis for testing all vaccinations. And it's responsible for saving millions and millions of lives and stopping billions with a B of cases of these massive diseases. And so the lives that they've saved, this is important as well. But if you think of a life that's affected by polio, it's almost like a life saved. And so someone may not have died, but may have had polio. Their life is effectively completely and utterly changed, most of the time for the worse. And so protecting them from polio, they may have been able to survive it or whatever, but they may not have died. Well, these are really great things. So that number, I would say, lives saved and functional members of society is even higher than what this website says. But this is a very important strain and a very great case of the fact that we talk about ethics and things when it comes to science, and this is a great case of a a fetus that has made global change in human life all over.
So the first question I'm going to ask you, and you knew this was coming. I told you I'd ask you this question. How can you quantify those numbers, right? How do we get to quantify those actual numbers? If we talk about the last segment, what was not Chris Tucker, but Tucker Carlson's actual argument? And yes, I can make fun of myself. Thank you. What was his actual argument? He was saying, hey, Bill Nye, what are the numbers? Tell me what the numbers are. How do you not know the numbers? Where are the numbers? Can you tell me what would happen if humans hadn't been intervened? I'm going to ask you the same thing here, Hannah. How do we know these numbers exist and are actually real?
That's the biggest issue is when I mentioned the Ames study. So the Ames Public Health Study, 2017, we have the link. It's included in the article from the news uic.edu. This is the news center that we got this article from. Well, they link to the study specifically published by Ames Public Health, and Ames Press gives this information. They give this statistical analysis, and we talk about things like the number of vaccines was 198 million in the United States and 4.5 billion globally. When they give the breakdown to how many people got these vaccinations, they go into also the per capita rates of these diseases and the prevalence rates of these diseases, and they talk about what would have happened had these vaccinations not have had their effect. And that's where they're getting these numbers. So obviously this has got a soft paywall, and so this is a scientific paper. So you have you have access to the abstract, and when it comes to the full text HTML, we're looking at a scientific paperwork. So you have to spend some money to get into it. But when it comes to basically peer-reviewed articles, this is something that in most cases you can usually trust. So I will give my own personal word to say that this scientific study is good, even pending the soft paywall for the full text. And they go through the information, and that's where you're going to get the statistical analysis that verifies this study. And so that's one of the reasons why we were talking from the UIC News Center, saying that this study has saved this number of lives, and then also going into specifically what WI-38 is, as far as the science behind it, as to why the vaccinations rely so much on it and how it saved those lives.
Excuse me. And behind it, they talk about how it's filled with success stories, right? They talk about a case of Edward Jenner's work on a vaccination for smallpox. And he was first attacked and ridiculed for his ideas, but of course later he was vindicated. The modern rise of the anti-vaccination movement have accelerated with a manuscript published in 1998 claiming that MMR vaccines have caused developmental disorders in children. Even though that article has been retracted, some journals continue to still publish it, and evidence suggests that a significant and dangerously high percent of the U.S. population either delays or refuses vaccinations for their children within the first 24 months of their life. Now, we could talk about personal experience all day long, and we could talk about the people we know. But think about this. We had an episode last year that talked about, who was it? What was the famous actor that was anti-vaccinations?
It wasn't Robin Williams. It was Raging Bull. Robert De Niro. Yeah,
right?
It was the film festival he's in charge of. He wanted to put the anti-vaccination movie out, and it was trash. The movie is utter garbage. It's propaganda horseshit. It's the same exact thing that this MMR, the same guy who created this the scientific paper that was retracted because it was essentially deemed trash by the entire scientific community. This guy made a movie, and Robert De Niro was like, "Hey, man, this guy's got a movie. He's got an important thing." And he and some friends just recently put out an award. If you can prove that vaccinations don't cause autism, we'll give you this much money. So essentially, it's like, Chris, I'll give you $1 million if you disprove God right now. Like, that's what they're asking. Like, don't disprove it. Well, I know it's a whole proving a negative thing, and then it gets nasty. But either way, like, what they're asking for is disprove this this article? Well, the entire scientific community basically said this is trash, and so Robert De Niro is obviously he's part of that as well. That's what you were the tangent that you wanted me to run off on.
A little bit, yeah. And so inside of this article, and like I said, there is some substance here. You know, there actually is some substance, and again, we'll put the article in the notes.
Which one, the MMR or the how good this vaccination?
Basically, how good all the vaccinations work, right?
Okay.
And they talk about this, and they talk about some of the benefits, right, of this vaccine. And they talk about how people are just basically exclaiming, you know, well, hold on a second. And they're saying early discoveries or breakthroughs in this chain of events that led to the vaccine becoming public health success story may have occurred eventually. However, timing is important, and there's no question that when the WI-38 cell strain became available in 1962, it was fortuitously discovered at the same time that the primary monkey kidney cells used to manufacture the polysynthesis vaccines were found to have been contaminated. Thus, the WI-38 represented a catalyst for sequent vaccine development. In fact, the success of the research that resulted in the development of the WI-38 in 1962 occurred when federal research funds were not prohibited for the use to study the biological tissue derived from an aborted human fetus. However, and here's your catch point, right? During several subsequent presidential administrations, it prohibited the enforcement of it. If that prohibition had been in effect in 1962, it is likely that in the subsequent 55 years, there would be billions of people who benefited from virus vaccines produced in WI-38. So what does that tell you, right? That we're talking numbers here. We're talking statistics. We're talking about one tissue derived from an aborted human. And the problem becomes here is people are going to say, well, aborted fetuses, they're humans, right?
Yeah.
And these aborted fetuses, they constitute to more lives than these lives.
They're making the utilitarian argument, so you need to save the maximum number of lives. So the question is, the one aborted fetus, if that can save 10 million or 450 billion, whatever total cases of disease, is that more utilitarian to sacrifice that one? Let's face it, most of the arguments when it comes to conservative things, they're more than willing. They're ready and willing to strap up Mr. Jesus and tie him to that T and kill his ass when it comes to making sure that he can be the scapegoat for their religion. Well, what's to say that this one child, this one female who was a scapegoat for all of our diseases, she was sacrificed for the good of the betterment of humanity? I mean, that's a tough question to ask when it comes to it.
Well, think about it this way. It reminds me of a Game of Thrones episode, right? In the Game of Thrones, in the TV show, there was this basically Red Witch, right? She worshipped the god of fire. And she believed she saw the forthcoming of the next, basically the next god in essence, right? And she saw this, and she basically said, well, the only way to get you here is to sacrifice somebody from your lineage. Well, she finally went down the line and basically got to his daughter and said, well, you can only win by sacrificing your daughter. So
nope.
they do. And guess what? In the end, he dies. She has to change her whole stance. And so here we are. We're back to this weird analogy, right? And I'll admit, this is a weird analogy.
This is a tangential episode, so we're getting on a fucking full circle tangent.
But I'm going to bring it around. Hold on a second.
Let's close it out.
you whirl the thing back around, and you look at it, and you go, okay, so they sacrificed one life to save thousands, basically, or millions in that episode. But that didn't ever happen because it was just a prophecy. There was no factual things. It was all based on belief.
So lives weren't actually saved?
Yes. No, they slaughtered tons of people in that episode or in the sequential episodes.
Well, this does sound like a Game of Thrones thing.
Yes. Now, if you go back to the study, let me bring this back around to the study. In the study, they had one aborted fetus cell structure that they used and have replicated. So it's not like they're killing baby or they're killing fetuses over and over again to get this. One happened to bring out the light. Now, this could be an anomaly, and I don't want to get into that tonight because I think that detracts from the actual discussion. But the whole point is the fact that one has been used to be replicated. So we cannot continue to condemn stem cell research because of the fact that we have one. And we cannot continue to try and say vaccinations are all created from stem cells from derived fetuses. We can't say that. That's not logical. That's not factual. That's like Robert De Niro saying, hey, I got a kid with autism. He had vaccines. Therefore, vaccines are bad.
Correlation?
You should all get rid of your vaccines because look at my kid. Well, dude, hold on. Let's prove the scientific side of it. Oh, does it support you? Well, I got millions of dollars. Yeah. I'm a millionaire. You should believe me. Wait, I make good movies, man. I make good movies. Do you like my movies? I like my movies. You like my movies? And well, Robert De Niro, man.
It's just correlation, and it's back to the correlation, not causation thing.
Exactly.
When it comes to that, like just the fact that you made a correlation to this, that does not mean that is a direct causation to this situation. And let's say this, okay, take away the moral argument and the problems that we still have with all of these vaccinations and how effective this one is and how great it is as a core base seed point for all of these other vaccinations. An estimated 1.4 million children under 5 worldwide still die each year due to lack of access to these vaccines. So that means 1.4 million children will die because they don't have access to this stuff. They can't get to it. We can't get those resources to those children. Where's that pro-life situation where it says, listen, every life matters except for the ones that I can't get money to, except for the ones that I can't get a couple of bucks to get that 50 cents a day to whatever kid needs some help in whatever poor country that these 1.4 million children every year die. Well, this is a hypocrisy in a situation that is easily solvable. Take 10% of the worldwide spending for war, defense, for destruction, and put that into getting these vaccines to these kids. We will see 1.4 million children less every year die. I would say that's more for the Christian and for the pro-life argument in my book. I'm not gonna throw any other special end on it. That's a pretty close date for me.
Exactly. Think of it this way. It is almost like that most of the people involved in today's anti-vaccination movement have improved health or are alive today because their parents and pediatricians had the foresight to administer vaccines to them when they were young. Think about that, people. Mic drop. Boom. Anyway, we'll be right back with another rant to end the episode out with more Cellar Door Skeptics. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
This is Matthew the Apostle from In the Name of God, the podcast. And you are listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hi, this is Trav Mamone, host of the By Any Means podcast. Join me every week as I interview bloggers, podcasters, writers, and activists about the intersections of atheism, humanism, racial justice, feminism, LGBTQ rights, and other social issues. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes, Spreaker, and Stitcher, and you can read my blog at freethoughtblogs.com/byanymeans. And remember, that's bi spelled B-I. Come take a listen to the musings of a queer humanist because, hey, aren't we all a little bi-curious?
Looking for something new and exciting? Or maybe just a change from the old atheist show format? Cellar Door Skeptics podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.
This is Trav Mamone, host of the By Any Means podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution. We have cookies.
Now, back to the show.
and welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. As a reminder to everybody, if you have a topic you'd like to get on the show, like the listener that got the first topic on the show tonight, make sure you send an email to cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. We'll be more than happy to get your segment or your topic onto the show.
Does that listener have a name?
She does. Her name is Maggie. Thank you, Maggie, so much for supporting us.
Just say thank you, Maggie, for sending us information, because we love it when people give us a response back. And this is an awesome topic, and you elucidated an incredibly contentious topic for the two of us, because I was unaware and Chris was relatively unaware.
Yeah, I did not know in any way, shape, or form.
Split up kids
big,
at the border? Holy
thing.
crap. So, yeah, thanks again.
Yep. And just as a quick reminder, we will be on a couple of different podcasts coming up here. We're going to be on Utah Outcast the week of April 1st. And I know that sounds fake. It's not really. We promise. It's not an April Fool's Day joke.
It's another day. The planet goes around. And,
anyways, we genuinely, we're going to be on another podcast on April 1st or the week of called Utah Outcast. We're also going to be on Skeptics Brew Pub on March 27th. And I don't know if that's a live show either. We'll post links to everything we're on, all on our Twitter and on our Facebook page to help promote the show and to tell everybody about where we've been.
And when it comes out. Just like which one was it? The Skeptics... I can't remember.
Skeptical Yakking.
The Yakking, yeah. That was going to be out in a couple weeks now. He's a few
so
weeks
that will
out.
be out. That will be out this week. So we'll post all links to that and make sure we have you understand where we are, where we've been, and what we're going. For future segments, again, we're going to have Jeremiah Bannister on from Team Tiny Dancer to talk about future after cancer, after the death of his daughter last year, who was only 13. We're going to be talking to a former Christian who used to play in a Christian band with me coming up next month. And we're going to have Hannah's first debate. It's not a sing-along. I'm not going to sing. You can sing if you want. I'm not going to sing. And I doubt he's going to sing either. So he was the lead singer.
We want to hear your music.
No,
we want to rip
you will.
That stuff
you will
and
hear
play
my.
it.
You'll laugh. It'll be a funny episode. Yeah. Well, you want to know what the name of our band was? Here's a little secret.
I think you remember. I remember you telling me, but I couldn't.
$5 if you can guess what it is.
I remember going with like Ska Christ or something.
Not even close. Try Empty Hand.
Oh,
Empty Hand.
Empty Hands. That's kind of pessimistic. It's a little.
It's not.
It's a little depressing, man.
Do you not know where that comes from?
No, I don't. I was raised by a Presbyterian light and a relatively religious Jew. Like, I got nothing on this. I'm guessing it's got a gospel ring to it or something.
It all does, yes.
Yeah. See, I couldn't tell you a gospel. I didn't learn any of the Psalms until I was almost 30 years old. So there's a reference point to how much religiosity I had growing up.
Because if we come empty-handed, we need to come empty-handed so Christ can fill our hands. Because basically, essentially, if we fill our hands with worldly deeds, good things we do, how awesome we are, how much we're doing for humanity, we're not doing God's work. We're doing man's work and trying to claim it as God's work. Therefore, we need to come empty-handed to Christ and allow Him to fill our hands. And I know that sounds bad. I know. I get
I'm not
that.
going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm just listening to you and just, okay.
Anyway.
So we got a last segment, and this is one of my segments that I pulled on because I got my Bernie stickers all over the place.
All right, go ahead. Intro the segment, Hannah.
That's fine. So the Progressive Army and all the rest of us who are just sick and damn tired of the lefties, and then the Democrats aren't leftists anymore. They're centrists at best. I mean, the most recent WikiLeaks stuff coming out, it looks like the Democrat Party is just basically a centrist party. They're willing to just be big government and not really be super progressive, and we're sick and tired of it. And so the elections came through. We had the Democratic National Convention chair was elected, and Keith Ellison was going to be one of the major. He was the major candidate compared to his opponent, and it's
Tom Perez. Tom Perez was his opponent.
Yeah, and none of the basically the Bernie-crats, none of the progressive movement really got any positions in this thing. This was a pretty heavy establishment whitewash, we'll call it. And so a lot of people who were they were not complete and total supporters of Hillary Clinton, but they maybe sort of kind of went with the Democratic Party because they said, listen, this is where we should go. And they're sick and tired of going with the establishment. They're sick and tired of going with the people who have been there for 20, 30, 40 years. And they're like, really? You just got upset and destroyed by, I would say, one of the weakest candidates in history.
Oh, no, he's the orange sewer monster, man. He's strong as hell.
Apparently he is. He can lift 30 immigrants with one arm, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He eats his immigrant spinach and, you know.
In the end, it comes down to, it's just like, how far are the establishment Democrats willing to overlook the popular movement, the populist movement amongst the left? Are they willing to sacrifice and double down on the establishment again, even though betting the entire house on the establishment lost last time? Do they think they can do it again? And I mean, this is a place where people are starting to diverge, and we're seeing if there's a strong enough movement to make a third party or not.
Yeah, well, some of this is exciting, right? Because I would like to see a third or fourth or fifth party. I would like to see that. That's part of my desire for our nation, and it's because I'm an outsider. I'm an outlier. I was an aggressive Bernie supporter, until he lost. I went with Clinton because I didn't want the establishment to win, but I really did not want the Trump anti-establishment. It's funny because I listened to Dan Carson.
Dan.
Yep, and I'm sorry, and it's funny because he actually touched on this in his podcast, Common Sense, and he said this. He said,
"Breathe, my good friend."
He actually said this. He said that he supported off-party candidates for so long. He wanted that fringe candidate. He wanted that person that was going to come out,
but
and
when he
not
got
be
it.
that. But then when Trump came up, and then Trump came to the thing, he's like, holy crap, that's not the guy. Hold on, that's not that guy. Not that guy. I bet he would have supported Gary Johnson. Now, he didn't come out and say that, but it almost feels like he would have supported a Gary Johnson-type figure over a Trump-type figure.
I'm surprised he didn't. Really.
Well, we don't know. He's not openly saying who he voted for. But the fact comes down to it that we look at the system, and we look at where the system's at, and we look at all these different factors, right? And we sit there and go, I went standard. I went regular party this time. I went right with the Democrats. I don't know if I could say that I could do this time.
Yeah.
I don't think I can.
I usually don't. I usually can't. I've never really completely told you. I had someone actually, this is a good time to mention it. The upcoming debate that I'm going to be having, provided he shows up there, he said, "Oh, we're Democrats. We basically just whatever." And so I basically was like, I've never been a Democrat. I've never registered. I've never been completely and remotely party specific. And so I've always been relatively independent. And this is an important thing that a lot of the Democrats in charge need to realize, that a lot of people that are young millennials have never had a massive political position. We've never been incredibly dependent on our political identity, and they need to win us. They need to win the young people. And apparently Donald Trump did a better job. I have no idea how, but he did. He apparently did. He pulled out the electoral importance, and so it wasn't the popular vote, but close enough.
But I want to make a big point here, and we could talk about, the CNN and how biased they are, right? We could talk about that if we want. And in all fairness, I kind of side with Jeremiah Bannister from Paleo Radio on this. He says in the article from CNN, they say this. They say the race to the DNC committee chair, normally a quiet affair managed by party insiders, emerged as a rolling public campaign as progressives loyal to Senator Bernie Sanders and established Democrats jousted for control of a depleted organization, increasingly at loose ends after 8 years in the White House, and then a Hillary Clinton unexpected loss to Donald Trump. Now I'm going to stop right there. I don't even want to read the rest of the article to anybody, right? CNN, these people are sitting here and saying it's an unexpected loss. Now, I'm not going to say that I wasn't a little surprised. I'm not going to say that I called it or was some revolutionary genius. But I am going to say that it isn't super unexpected in the fact that Clinton lost to Trump. Clinton is unpopular. She was not a popular candidate. She did not do well in the debate. She only had semi-good statements. She was a flip-flopper. she was not true to her statements for the whole of her career. Now, on the opposite side, she was very versed in politics, right? She had a lot of outside influence that she could throw around.
Lifelong politician.
Yes.
I mean,
she
in it
has
from the
spent many years working for the government. She has a lot, and I will say this, whether you agree with it or not, she does have a lot of foreign expertise, experience. Now, we may not agree with what the decisions she made.
Well, she may have made some
that.
bad decisions. Yes, she may have not been the best at that, but she does have a bunch of experience in that. And really, in the end, what it comes down to is just like she has had a lot of experience in those fields. But when it comes down to whether or not she was a popular candidate, when we looked at this election, we looked at it was like the two most unelectable people is what they were examining. The public perception was as low as it's been, and so like they basically said like we don't like them or we don't like them. So what is the change here? And we saw a massively positive overall reaction to Bernie Sanders, and he couldn't overcome the walls and the whether or not you want to go conspiracy or not in the DNC for winning that election. And so there's those situations when it comes to whether or not the DNC was manipulated in any of that for who would actually give you their nominee. Like these types of problems are something that the new progressives, the people that are going to be looking at the 2020 elections, we need to think about. We need to figure out what's going to happen, because it can't be we're just going to double down on the regular establishment people. So we're going to go with the people who have just been in these positions for a long period of time. I don't think people your age, Chris, and my age, and even younger people who are just going to be in their first or second elections ever are going to vote for just some rich person who just says they're going to do everything for us without any kind of background emphasis in actually doing what they're doing. Because Clinton said she's going to help the middle class, but it seems like the Trump campaign did a better job at connecting to the middle class. So what's the difference between what her campaign message was and what Trump's was? We need to change those.
Well, what it came down to is some of her positions, but let's forget Clinton for a second, and let's look at Debbie Wasserman, right? Let's look at Donna Brazil. She was the interim chair. What were they exposed for? Whether it was right or wrong, who gives a flying fuck at this point how they were exposed? They are exposed for having biased positions.
Oh, without question.
And I'm sorry.
And
like at this point,
they were fired.
At this point, folks, we cannot accept anybody that associates with them. We have to cleanse ourselves. If we don't cleanse ourselves, all we're going to be is another goddamn party that turns into the Republicans. All we do is look like Republican light right now. That's all it is. Where the hell is the change? Where the hell is the progressive positions? And I'm saying you don't have to go as far as I do. You don't have to go as far left and go into the whole socialist side. But what the fuck? The people I'm looking for, where's Elizabeth Warren? She should be the one that should be nominated as a chair.
I don't understand why she wasn't in the running. I really don't. I have no idea why Elizabeth Warren wasn't even...
And I don't either, but some of it goes back to this establishment Democrats. It's the double-down analysis.
The only thing I think of is that Elizabeth is looking and eyeing up a presidential run. So
and
she wanted to become
does.
the DNC.
And I hope she does. And I hope she
really
excludes the DNC.
I
hope she has her own party, for fuck's sake, because I'm goddamn sick of these establishment Democrats. I'm goddamn sick of these establishment Republicans. And we finally get a non-establishment Republican in the White House, and he's even worse. But
trash.
at least he's anti-establishment in what he was saying. Now, his
he said he
actions
was,
don't show it.
Is he? He's not anti-establishment.
We got to give him a few more months before we can claim that.
I don't know if I could. He's got like 7 or 8 Goldman Sachs major executives.
But he's withdrawing from the TPP, Hannah. That's right. Whatever reasons he's done that for, in all fairness,
because he wants a better one that'll give people more money in the U.S. The U.S. has to win. His whole idea is winning. So like,
he
the
sounds
US
like Charlie Sheen. I know
it is, but that's his fiscal policy when it comes to Trump. He's like everything is treated like a win-loss situation. So if he doesn't win, it's not a win. So like he's gonna pull out of any kind of negotiations or whatever, unless he has the upper hand and can take the top-down control.
Yes.
That's one of the things that we've seen so far. If like with his executive decisions and everything that he's making, like once he runs out of leeway, when he can't go any further, we'll see what he can do, because if he can't make an executive decision and just have that in paperwork, he has to go through the legislative process. We'll see if he thinks he can actually get some process done, because that's a true businessman. If he can make a bunch of people agree on his position, or if it takes an authoritarian, decree to get your position, that is not making deals to me. That is just yelling at people until they submit.
Yeah. And the Observer article says this. They said, the New York Daily News editorial board suggested that Ellison, the guy who you and I both want to be the chair, shouldn't be the chair because he's an avid Sanders supporter and he represents the leftmost fringe of a party that should continue to vie for the vital center. Why? The vital center didn't work. Do we not get this? The vital center didn't work for either side.
Obama and Clinton were both vital center.
Yes. And guess what? Our society is moving past the center, right?
It just went hard right. It went hard right.
Yes. Trump is not center. He's
No
not.
way.
He's northeast of center. He's authoritarian right.
Yeah.
And Bernie is far left center. Fair
But
enough.
he's not even a socialist either. Like,
No,
socialists
he's
are like
center. He's more center than he is a socialist. Yes.
If our socialist friend ever shows up on our show, if he ever shows up, if he basically calls Bernie, he's just like he's a socialist imposter. He doesn't use the actual socialist name. He's not a real socialist. Well, we would love to hear the actual voice of an actual socialist. What do you think of Bernie Sanders? Do you think he's way too left? Do you think he's not left enough? And then, obviously, do you think he's a centrist? Well, because like a Democratic socialist obviously is in between a centrist and in between a full-on leftist socialist. So we would love to see what you guys think. Anybody out there has an idea, let us know what you think of Bernie Sanders. And is he a socialist, or is he just, what would have traditionally been a regular Democrat if we hadn't seen this movement towards the center?
Yeah. And the article ends with this. They say this. They say Democrats and elected officials across the county, Sanders and millions of people who support him aren't a fringe position of the Democratic Party, but represent several progressives that are disenfranchised, working and middle-class voters who have become disillusioned with a party that now focuses on courting wealthy donors. The Democratic Party needs to embrace Sanders' progressive populism if it wants the chance to recoup the millions of voters that it lost in the past decade. Ellison is serving as the DNC chair would be a major step in unifying the divide between progressives and party establishment. They're not even saying go full-on left, go full-on progressive. They're just saying we need to find a happy medium. We need to find a way to merge that gap, because those of us, like me and like Hannah, who are Sanders supporters, are going to have a hard time voting for a very centrist Democratic Party in the future. My vote felt lost in this election. I felt like I lost with Clinton on the ballot. I voted for her, and everything fell apart because she was too far centrist, too many issues, and we watched a fringe candidate named Trump win. I'm not saying Bernie would have beat Trump. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. All I'm saying is that I don't have an ability to want to justify supporting another centrist candidate when I can start preserving and supporting progressive values, even if it means I got to violate and compromise a few things to vote for a Green Party candidate. At this point, all I could do is start to tear down the establishment, which has screwed me and screwed everybody else in the middle class and lower class over. So at this point, I do support the resistance, and I do want to step up and have a change and watch the revolution take a hold of the world. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night. We'll be back next week with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, cellardoorskeptics.com.